Hi, welcome to Masego Empire. This is the empire that talks about school application, talks about scholarship, talks about studies in Canada, talks about studies in the US, it talks about studies in Australia, New Zealand, talks about studies in the US, Belgium, and Netherlands, and where have you. Welcome. If today happens to be the first time you chancing on this page, kindly consider following. Now, today we actually going to talk about what are the documents that constitute a successful graduate or postgraduate application. So, if you are somebody who is going to study for your master's or your PhD, it's good to note that it is not just your good grades, it's not just your first class, your second class upper that makes a successful application. That will give an opportunity to the admission committee for them to give you an admission. It's actually all the documents, the sum total of all the documents that you are submitting to the admission committee that will give them the hope to issue you an acceptance. Either you are going to study in a business school, either you are going to study in a medical school, either you are going to study in an engineering school, you need certain documents. You get that? Sorry. Good. Today, the documents that we actually going to talk about is called a letter of recommendation. Letter of recommendation. It is good to know that it is not all schools that will request for a letter of recommendation, but most schools that have highly competitive admission process. If I say highly competitive admission process, it means that schools that highly qualified applicants apply to, but unfortunately these schools just have a limited space for their applicants, will always put a letter of recommendation as a key document that will help them to issue admission to students who are fit for purpose, give them opportunity to only admit students who are actually qualified for that program. So it's very important that we pay attention to people, or we pay attention to who will give us a recommendation letter. Don't just take an email of just any professor or just any employer to just give a recommendation for you. Whoever gives you the recommendation is very, very important. Now, what is a recommendation letter? A recommendation letter is just a letter that is written by a professor or that is written by your employer to attest to the fact that you have all the academic credentials, you have all the skills, you have all the achievements, or you are actually fit to study that program successfully. Now, if a professor who from academia who will be giving you this letter of recommendation, he or she is actually going to do certain specific things. He or she will talk about your academic qualifications, will talk about your grades. He or she will talk about what your achievement, if you have done or you have engaged yourself in any leadership positions, you have occupied leadership positions, or you have done certain things outside this in the classroom. The professor needs to talk about this. Now, if your employer is the one going to give you the recommendation, then the employer will be talking about some of the skills that you have acquired that will help you to be able to study that program successfully. Now, so it depends on the program, and it depends on certain things that will give you the realization as to going for a professor or going for an employer. Now, all these things depends on the school you are applying to. There are certain schools that will tell you that if you have completed school within 2 years, then two professors from your previous school should give you the recommendation. Or if you are out of school more than 2 years, then your employer or professionals that you have worked with should be the one giving you the recommendation. So it depends on the school. The schools may say 2 from academia and 1 from professional. So it depends on these scenarios. Now, it is also good to note that if you are actually going to study for maybe a master's in economics, whoever gives you the recommendation should be somebody who have a background in economics, because the person must speak about how you've been able to acquire your grades, how good you are in terms of accomplishing or completing that particular program. You get that? So you should not be going to study a program in economics, then you are getting professors who are well vested in English. Because as they say, it is not every nice that is nice. What that professor in English may be writing will not necessarily be the skills, the achievement, or academic credentials that people in economics background will be wanting to see. So it is very important that you know who gives you the recommendation. It is also good to know that it is not all employers that are qualified to give you recommendation if you are going to apply for your master's or your PhD. I have been a teacher, and maybe I want to apply for a master's program in computer science. If I want my employer to give me recommendation, that employer is well vested in education. So he or she may not have the skills, or they may not know the nitty-gritty in relation to computer science. So the recommendation that he may be giving me may not be fit. Now, most of us are just interested in who gives us recommendation. You see, no, at least you should have some form of engagement. You should closely work together. For me, I will tell you that work closely together with somebody for a minimum of 6 months before that person will be able to give you a recommendation. Working with somebody for 6 months will give an opportunity to the person to know you, will give an opportunity to see how critically you can think, will give that person an opportunity to see how qualified you are, your traits, your skills. You see who you are, the person will be able to know, rather than just getting somebody to give you a recommendation. Now, if you are going to ask somebody to give you recommendation, I would advise that you give the person certain documents, because there are certain documents you are going to submit to the school. What are these documents that you are submitting to the school? You'll be submitting your transcript, you'll be submitting your certificate, you'll be submitting your letter of motivation or your statement of intent, you'll be submitting your research proposals. You see, you'll be submitting your resume or your CV. All these documents that you are submitting, you are actually testifying on your behalf. These are things that you are submitting to the admission committee, proving that you meet all the admission requirements. You meet all that they need or they wanted to see in their potential students. You are submitting these things. Now, the recommendation is actually somebody who has worked with you, who will be testifying on your behalf. Somebody who will give you a praise, saying that, yes, this person, I know him, he has all the skills, he will be able to meet the challenges, meet what it takes to be able to complete that program. So if you have asked somebody to give you a recommendation, it is always proper, it is always good that you give that person your transcript, you give that person your resume or your CV, you give that person your letter of motivation or your statement of purpose. These things should be given to that person for him to see who you are, for him to see what you have written. The letter of motivation talks about so many things. It talks about the skills that you have acquired, and you are going to build upon those skills to be able to complete that program. The letter of motivation talks about your short-term goals. It talks about your long-term goals. It even also talks about why you have chosen that particular country, why you have chosen that particular school. So the person who is your referee, who will be giving you the letter of recommendation, will look at all these things that you have said. So he or she will say things that will complement them. He or she will say things that will give the admission committee an assurance to prove that this person is actually fit for this particular program. So you must always present these documents to them. It's very, very, very important. Give these documents to the person. Then the person will be able to what? Add more. The person will say a lot of things that will match it. You see? Now, there are a lot of us who will just possibly call a professor, call your employer and tell him that, oh, I want to apply to this school. So please, can you give me a recommendation? They also agree. It's good to have a lengthy conversation with this professor or this employer or this supervisor. Have a lengthy conversation with them. Tell them why you have chosen that school. Tell them why you have chosen that particular program. And even tell them maybe if you have to do some form of analysis to be able to finally arrive on the choices that you have made, and tell them why it is so important for you to be admitted to that program. These are things that you must discuss with them. You see, I know there are certain professors who even ask you to write a recommendation and send to them to just send to the school. A professor who tells you to do that simply means that that professor does not really know what you are asking him or her to do. Because under normal circumstances, the letter of recommendation that they'll be writing for you, you don't have to see it. It's a confidential document that they are doing. It's a confidential report that they are supposed to give on your behalf. So you don't have to see it. That is why they must have a good relationship with you. They must have a good rapport with you. They should have worked with you for a minimum of 6 months so that they know who you are. You see? Now, it is also good to know that there is a difference between a letter of recommendation and letter of reference. The two does not mean the same thing. A letter of recommendation is actually used in academic setting. So they are giving you a recommendation. They are testifying on your behalf to prove that you are actually fit to be able, or you are the best candidate to be admitted into that program. Now, the letter of reference could also mean that a document that actually speaks about who you are, a document that clearly shows that this is the person. He has these skills. I've worked with him, and that letter of reference can be used for more than one purpose. Could be used for admission, could be used for job, could be used for so many things. Now, so it is good that we know that the content of these two things are not the same. So we must pay attention to who gives us a recommendation. You see, when you are applying to a particular program, you need to know that you are going to compete with applicants all over the world. Now, let's assume that somebody is applying for a master's in law. So all students who have successfully graduated from their undergraduate program will be applying to that program all over the world. Now, what the admission committee do is that they will first sort all those who have gotten their first class. They will sort them first, review the admission, select those they are going to pick before they consider those with second class upper, before they consider those with second class lower. So it wouldn't make sense that students who have had a second class upper will get admission over those who have gotten a first class. So if somebody has a first class, he or she hasn't gotten admission, but a second class applicant has gotten admission, clearly shows that there is a gap. There is something the first class student hasn't done. That gives a room to the admission committee to just refuse his or her application. You see, because under normal circumstances, all first class graduates should have been issued admission before they consider a second class applicant. So it is not just getting somebody to give you a recommendation. It is ensuring that the right documentation, the right recommendations are given. So don't think that you've had a first class and that is okay. No. Let me see if there are any questions. Then we take it from there. Fokuma, I see you. I see you guys. Okay. Hey Ford, I see you. Hey Justice, how you doing? Good, 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 good. Casing, I see you too. Good. So, guys, that is it. So, as you are going to start sending your emails now, some of you will be working on your statement of purpose, your letter of motivation, you'll be working on it in bit. It is also good that you start working on who will be giving you your recommendation. It's very important so that you can get who will be doing that ahead of time and see what sort of discussions you have with him or her, so that when the time comes, Charlie, you'll be issued an admission. It's very, 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 very important. So that is what I want to discuss with you today. If you realize that what I have just discussed with you, the content I've shared with you is so engaging, kindly consider sharing this video so that other people will have access to it and they will be able to accomplish their dreams. Enjoy the rest of your night. Bye-bye.